You go to America.
You work as
and
lifeguard.
They have beach in America. See, I am from Moscow. It's me, Moscow Mario.
Well, folks, thank you for listening to Come Town.
Is that it?
I think it's it. I have to go to
bandsintown.com/Nick Mullen.
Stabby.biz/tour, although by now...
Please buy tickets to Nashville and Louisville. If you don't, I will cancel the show.
You have plenty of time.
If they don't sell out, I will cancel the show.
Cometown.events.
If he's even one
ticket off,
one ticket short, it's canceled.
the show will be canceled.
Oh, yeah, Cometown.events.
Cometown.events. We're in Australia in
I will be
April.
going to Graceland instead.
That's pretty sick.
I will spend the entire time in Graceland.
That's pretty cool, actually.
And if you come up to me and say hi, I will be very friendly to you. Because I'll be happy. Because the shows will have been canceled. And I'll finally just get to be a guy that
is visiting a place.
Goes to tourist attractions. He doesn't even... He goes, oh, okay.
Oh, nice.
Then I go back to my hotel and masturbate to the year 2009. The concept of it. Just the idea that it's 2009. And I beat off to that.
Yep. See us in Australia. See us on the road. Come to Funny Moms tomorrow.
Yes, Funny Moms tomorrow. We are off. We're not going to be doing Funny Moms on the 30th of this month.
Who cares?
Who cares? And then we're off on April until the 27th. So we're taking a little break, but we have 2 shows. We have 3 shows this month, the 9th, the 16th, and the 23rd.
That's right. See you there, motherfuckers.
Bye.
Oh, I got to hit the button here. Okay.
Right about here, we stopped along and we looked up. We saw.
Hello Premiums, thanks for tuning in. You're listening to episode 72 and bringing this one out so quickly after the last MU episode has been difficult because I've already used up a lot of the stories that were floating around for the week. But I have gathered together a quick collection of fun stories for this episode. None of them are related to each other in any way. They're just a big random selection. Well, the first 2 are from India actually. This one's from the BBC, where Hindu gods have been summoned to an Indian court. A judge in India has summoned 2 Hindu gods, Ram and Hanuman, to help resolve a property dispute. Judge Sunil Kumar Singh in the eastern state of Jharkhand papers, asking the gods to appear before the court personally. The gods have been asked to appear before the court on Tuesday after the judge said that letters addressed to them had gone unanswered. Ram and Hanuman are among the most popular Indian Hindu gods. Judge Singh presides in a fast-track court designed to resolve disputes quickly, and this dispute's 20 years old. It revolves around the ownership of a 1.4-acre plot of land housing 2 temples. The deities of Ram and Hanuman, the monkey god, are worshipped at the 2 temples on the land. A temple priest claims the land belongs to him, and locals say it belongs to the two deities. The two Hindu gods have been summoned as the defence claimed that they were owners of the disputed land. And according to the article, the notices the judge put out in the local newspaper said, "You failed to appear in court despite notices sent by a peon and later through registered post. You are hereby directed to appear before the court personally." So despite how ridiculous it sounds, it just looks like the judge is trying to rush it through the court. And still on India, there's an article from timesofindia.indiatimes.com on a haunted house that has rationalists stumped. Strange apparitions moving across rooms, a trail of water on the floor, beds and pillows getting wet. Horror movie freaks may think this to be the plot of the next Ramsay Brothers adventure. However, this is little joy for the residents of a century-old building at Santragachi where these sightings are taking place. Siddhartha Banerjee and his family have occupied this century-old house for nearly 5 decades now. While Banerjee stays on the ground floor, his sister stays in the rooms above. It all started 13 days ago when family members found water on the floors where none had been spilled. Even beds and mattresses were moist. Banerjee's daughter Varsha complained of seeing shadows moving across rooms. As the news spread, an investigation team visited the house on Thursday. They reasoned that the floor and beds were being wet by animals. The family has a pet dog. A number of cats also haunt the house. The needle of suspicion, thus the apparitions, were dismissed as a figment of Varsha's imagination. However, as luck would have it, the team suddenly spotted a patch of water on the floor with no animal in the vicinity. Although the team members did not have any explanation, they contended that the water may have seeped through the old flooring. You see, I told you it was a slow news day. The next story is an interesting one. It's how marriage saved one man's life. Studies have shown that marriage can have a very real effect on your health, but can marriage actually save your life? For one man, it did. When armed robbers came into Donnie Register's antique shop in Jackson, Mississippi this weekend, pointing guns and demanding cash, Register threw his left hand in front of his face. One of the robbers fired a shot, hitting the shopkeeper on his wedding ring, which deflected the bullet away from his face, almost certainly saving his life. And the next story is from a place I would never have thought of looking for something for mind shots. It's from portfolio.com. with an interesting article on a new type of startup company that's being funded by Google, 23andMe, and it's betting you'll want to web surf your own DNA. The article's by David Ewing Duncan, who writes, "This just in, Illumina CEO Jay Flatley has the sprinting gene, a cluster of DNA that is associated with professional athletes and Olympic track stars, those human beings whose muscles twitch fast instead of slow. Flatley, a stocky 55-year-old industrial engineer, chuckles at the discovery. On the other hand, he lacks a fairly common gene variant linked to type 2 diabetes. That's good news, he says, zooming in on a virtual human body that's now floating on his computer screen. He clicks on the figure's leg and up pops a page describing the gene for restless leg syndrome. It causes some people to flail around at night, resulting in sleeplessness. The webpage includes graphics, descriptions, and links to studies and references, including PubMed, the online health science library. He's quoted as saying, "This site will tell me if I have a gene for obesity or whether my earwax is wet or dry." I'm not kidding. So the journalist is basically getting a Web 2.0 service called 23andMe. It's named after the number of paired chromosomes in every human. And the article writes the launch is set for the end of this year, but I just checked it. It looks like it's already up at 23andme.com. And this is a really interesting new business concept. There's not only one company doing it, there's a few. 23andMe is using Illumina's powerful gene reading chips to build a company hoping to cash in on personalized genomics. It's the tailoring of an individual's healthcare and lifestyle based on DNA and biomarkers. Now, they write that when 23andMe goes live, customers will be asked to spit into short plastic tubes or do swab cells from inside their cheeks and mail in the sample. 23andMe will then analyse the data in relation to reams of information about ailments, treatments, diet, and ancestry, and then compare the results with those of thousands of others who have been tested for genes associated with diseases and other traits. This will all be channeled into a customised DNA diary. The company is considering a feature that would allow people to then link their personalised pages to those of others who also share their DNA, fellow sprinters, for example, or people at risk of Alzheimer's. So obviously they're trying to make it something like Facebook for DNA. Now, they haven't discussed pricing yet, but you can probably check it out on their website. And competitors are talking about charging upwards of $2,000 a person. So it's pretty controversial stuff, but it could be very, very lucrative. I mean, it's kind of tempting to look into that information. If they make it very Web 2.0, very interactive, and the social networking aspects would be interesting as well, it could take off. But the problem is, as pointed out by the article, scientists don't have a full understanding of most genes. It's still a work in progress. And there's a quote from Francis Collins here, who led the international consortium that sequenced the human genome and now directs the National Human Genome Research Institute. He said just because we've identified a gene as being thoroughly understood, or that having a gene has any real predictive value, but this hasn't deterred 23andMe and the other companies from entering what they believe is a potentially gigantic market. One source close to the company said, "We've only scratched the surface of understanding the human genome, but the company will be very responsible with the information it will make available to consumers. It's working very closely with the research community." So I'll put the links to this article in the show notes. It's on portfolio.com. It's a 6-page article, so it's quite in-depth. I'm just on the 23andMe site now, and it looks like the price is up there. It's not $2,000, but it's still expensive. It's $999 per kit. But this is kind of interesting. Is this something you'd want to do? I mean, I'd be really curious just to spit in a tube and then log onto a website and have your genetic code mapped out in pretty graphics and nice charts. I think that'd be fun. Maybe not for $999 though, but if anyone wants to try it out, and let us know, share it with mysteriousuniverselisteners.com. I was looking at all my articles I had ready for this episode and thinking, how on earth can I segue between these? But it turns out I can, because that company we just mentioned, 23andMe, is invested by Google. I've got a story on Google here from the San Francisco Chronicle, where Tom Abate is reporting on their shot for the moon. He writes, "It's like a James Bond film come to life. A company based on a tiny island in the British archipelago parachuted into San Jose on Thursday to become the first private team to enter a race to reach the moon by 2014 and thereby pocket most of a $30 million prize offered by Google's head of the X Prize Foundation, which is administering the purse that Google offered in September, said, "We are challenging small private teams to do what only 2 governments have done before, land on the surface of the moon. Entrants must fly a craft to the moon, operate a robotic rover, and transmit data to Earth to win the $20 million first prize or the $5 million second prize, plus $5 million in bonuses." Now, out of 375 inquiries from more than 40 countries, so far only a company called Odyssey Moon has completed the registration process to become an official contender. Now, this company, Odyssey Moon's leaders include Robert Richards, a co-founder of International Space University, and Ramin Kardam, the former chief financial officer at Inmarsat, a nearly 30-year-old satellite firm. And officials said the company is based on the Isle of Man to take advantage of space-friendly tax policies and regulations. According to Odyssey Moon's website, the company's goal is to lower the price of getting to the moon by an order of magnitude, and in doing so help catalyze Earth's sister world, which Richards describes as an 8th continent rich in energy and resources. Now, it's interesting here, Richards points out that it's clear the mission's going to cost more than the actual prize they would win. He says the payoff would be getting a head start in private space exploration. And it's going to be interesting to see how they can do it, because the current government-sponsored robotic missions cost anywhere from $500 million to $1 billion. But these little private companies estimate they can do it for like a tenth of the cost. So the next 5 years are going to be really interesting for private space travel. Diamanda said he expects the first moon launch to get off the ground within roughly 4 years. He said, "Get ready for some fun and amazing decades of private exploration ahead." next article's from thedailymail.co.uk, and this is a sensational story on pilots' out-of-body experiences. It writes that some pilots will suffer the illusion that they are sitting on the wing of their aircraft, watching themselves in the cockpit. This is all according to an extraordinary official report released in Australia. Every pilot will at some stage lose all sense of direction, height and speed, drawing attention to spatial disorientation. This is one of the most common factors in plane crashes, according to a report by the Australian Transport Safety Bureau. Now, aviation medicine specialist Dr. David Newman said 90 to 100% of pilots experience this spatial disorientation, which have been linked to between 15 and 26% of fatal crashes worldwide. Newman drew attention to the illusion suffered by some pilots who gained the impression of sitting on the wing, looking at themselves flying the aircraft, including a feeling that the plane was falling when it was merely slowing down. Now, drawing attention to the sitting on the wing illusion, Newman added that the knife edge illusion gives the pilot a sensation that the aircraft is precariously positioned in space and extremely sensitive to control inputs. But he also referred to what he called the giant hand illusion, which gives the pilot the sensation that the aircraft is intolerable of control inputs and seemingly immovable in the air as if held aloft by a giant hand. He said while seemingly bizarre, these illusions are generally associated with high altitude flight, where the pilot has a relatively low level workload. He said under such fishbowl conditions, the brain can wander. And considering our reporting of out-of-body experiences on the show before, I have to question whether these are just illusions. Are the pilots actually leaving their bodies and floating outside the plane, looking back at themselves? I mean, it sounds like your typical out-of-body experience, which I'm not quite sure is just an illusion. So it's a very interesting report for this holiday season. Now, I wanted to close the show out today with an amazing abduction experience. This is from Milwaukee in Wisconsin. It's on the website hbccufo.org, run by Brian Vike. And the witness writes, "Hi Brian, I wrote you a few months back about a possible abduction event that occurred back in February of 2004 in Wisconsin. My wife and I both experienced this event. During the last several months, things have become even more strange in that these experiences seem to occur with greater frequency. We moved into a new house back in September. One day as we were sitting on our front porch, something caught my eye. There appeared to be two white or metallic spheres zigzagging in the sky above our house. I was so excited that my wife was there to see it that I began yelling to my wife to look while pointing out the spectacle. This isn't the first time I've seen these spheres. I've seen them quite often, particularly when there are a lot of chemtrails in the sky. Strangely, I quickly forgot about this event until later that night when I woke up near 3 a.m. and felt that same ominous feeling that comes with I felt that something was again present in the room with us. The bedroom door was open. I quickly sat up and looked into the hallway. I could see that something was there. Now, it's difficult for me to explain this figure other than that it had no texture or features other than being completely black, in the sense that it was a void. In other words, this thing didn't appear to have any colour, but appeared to be a gaping hole in the shape of a being. I had the distinct impression that I could have put my hand right through this thing, and that it would be like putting my hand into an empty space. It was darker than a shadow, so the only other characteristic it had was its shape. It stood perhaps 5 feet tall and seemed rather well built for its height. Its arms were longer than ordinary and seemed to go slightly below the knees. In a sense, it looked similar in shape to a short, stocky human being with a flat-top haircut. It wasn't the common grey that many people tend to see during these experiences. I had the impression that this being was rather strong because the shape conveyed a being that seemed almost military and authoritative. Sweat came over me and was totally unable to talk. Fear set in. The next thing I remember was waking up in the morning and trying to rationalise my way through the experience. Basically, I was attempting to look into the hallway and reduce what I had seen to shadows being cast onto the walls. But no matter how hard I tried, there was nothing that could cast that kind of shadow. Several months earlier, I had a very intense encounter that was so real to me that I cannot put it away as a dream. This experience is what moved me to write about our February 2004 encounter, which really opened the floodgates for me in regard to the many recollections of encounters that I've had throughout my life. I didn't want to write about it then because it seemed a little too far-fetched, but I was keenly aware that it was real. The event happened over 2 nights. On the first night, I awoke to hear a humming sound. This humming sound has been with me for a very long time, and every time I hear it, I'm almost guaranteed that something will happen. The humming sound doesn't sound external, it is internal, a humming that I can hear in my head. So intense that I've had to ask people if they could hear the humming as well. They never do. On the first night, all I heard was the humming and then fell asleep without incident. The next night, I decided to stay up late and watch a movie. My wife had went to bed and my children were sleeping. My son had fallen asleep in the living room. At about 1 a.m, I decided to go to bed. In the driveway outside our house, I had seen what appeared to be a bright light coming through the window in my son's bedroom. My first impression was that someone pulled into the driveway and the headlights were facing my son's room. I went into the bedroom and peeked through the blinds, only to see what appeared to be a thick beam of bluish-white light shooting directly into the driveway. I quickly looked up to see the source of the light and became terrified because it was coming from a large object that hovered stationary above the trees. It happened so quickly that I couldn't make out a distinct shape. I felt that it was just waiting for me to see it. In complete terror, I turned around and tried to run back into the living room where my son was, before laying on my back in the hallway outside of my son's room. What happened next was one of the more conscious experiences I've had. I was completely paralyzed, but I was not unconscious. In fact, I was so conscious that I distinctly remember saliva rolling down the sides of my cheeks and trying to vocalize, but being unable to control my ability to talk or swallow. My entire body felt tingly and light. I could move my eyes somewhat, but it was a laborious process. I kept saying in my head, "This is real." And as I said this, I was deeply concentrating on the moment and attempting to forcefully put everything into my memory. I saw what appeared to be two blurry masses come into the room from out of nowhere. I say they were a blur because they moved so fast that it was difficult for my eyes to keep up with them. When they would slow down, I could immediately tell that they were thin, pale, and had large eyes. They were the definition of the so-called greys. I could also tell they were wearing a very tight-fitting jumpsuit of some sort. I remember asking a question in my head. I don't remember them respond something to the effect, "It will take more honour than that." This response seemed to almost mock me. I was no longer frightened by this point and felt that the answer was not meant to be insulting, but was delivered with an odd sense of humour. I still do not understand why I remember the answer and not the question. My son, who is now 3, has been telling me of his bad dreams. They include seeing people and hands coming out of the walls. When he was just a few months old, while still living in Hales Corners, there would be an owl sitting on the power lines just outside his room. This really made me uneasy because by that time I was beginning to read the stories. I would stand at his window on several occasions looking right at the thing. It just stood on the line staring right back. At all hours of the night I could hear the owl making noise outside. Perhaps they are only dreams, but maybe they aren't. These types of experiences seem to have followed me throughout my life. As a young boy, I remember other events of being awakened by my dog in the wee hours of the night, only to witness odd events outside my bedroom window. I've remembered the distinct feeling of floating outside the earth. This memory is just as real as any other memory that I have. The memory is so real, in fact, that even when viewing Google Earth, I have a nervous feeling in the pit of my stomach. Some of these encounters and experiences have been so odd that they defy any rational explanation and seem to deal with factors that transcend reason altogether. I've read the abduction stories of others and I've never been given warnings about ecological disaster, global cataclysms or terrorism. However, I have the intuitive knowledge that I know things that I'm not supposed to be consciously aware of until some later date. Every time I attempt to remember this buried knowledge, it seems that I'm blocked from accessing my own memories. Time will tell, I suppose. So another amazing abduction report sent into Brian Fikes, hbccufo.org. That one's from Milwaukee in Wisconsin. And that brings us to a close for this episode. Thank you for listening in. Thanks for being premium. I'll join you again on Monday night at around midnight for the next episode of Mindshot.
This week on Retronauts, now you're playing with power.
Superpower.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. It was like Nintendo 8-bit was power, but then it went 16-bit, it was superpower. That's amazing.
Yeah, they doubled it. They doubled the amount of power.
Doubled. There's twice as many powers inside.
Yes.
Super is exactly double?
I think so. Mathematically, yes. It is.
Cool.
It's like when you go to Starbucks, you get a tall, and then you get a super tall.
Right. There's like normal, then super, then Terra, then Peta, then X.
Mega.
Mega
Mega.
power. Yeah. Anyways,
Mega.
welcome to Retronauts. I'm your new host, Bob Mackey. Jeremy Parrish's reign of terror has ended after 5 years, but he's still here with me.
Yeah. I'm like Vito Corleone. Michael, you take over the family, and I'll just devise it.
So
Genuine Italian, everybody.
he learned it.
Genuine Italian.
Did you learn that from Assassin's Creed?
No, I just recently watched
Bastardo. Anyways, like I said,
fresca.
you know me and Jeremy. Let's introduce our special guests. You guys?
Well, you know me too. I'm Ray Barnholt.
Oh, that's right. Of course they know you.
Right.
Who the hell are you?
Yeah, Ray. Who are you?
I'm just some guy, on the side.
That sounds about right.
Okay.
Well, Ray, he's just this guy, you know?
And we also have...
I'm Samuel Claiborne. I'm an IGN editor.
Yes, we're cross-pollinating on podcasts now. It's safe. We're all good. Anyways,
Gregor
today's...
Mendel is proud.
Right. Today's, this week's topic is the 20th anniversary of the Super Nintendo, which I guess unofficially launched on August 23rd, 1991, correct?
Yeah, sometime around there.
Right.
And
And
it
if
was
I'm-
prox 20 years ago.
And if I may say, this is also kind of a anniversary for Retronauts as well. Because
Right.
remember that episode 0, we did a half of it on the Super Nintendo 15th anniversary.
That's amazing.
So,
Was the other part Donkey Kong? Was that right?
now it's like Metroid 2.
Oh, Metroid, yeah. Okay.
And so here we are all again, well, 2 of us from that show.
Yeah. And some interlopers.
That's the super. We've supered it. There's twice as many
Right.
people here.
I think
Yeah.
at this point we're Ultra. It's Ultra Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
I like.
Well, happy birthday, Super Nintendo. Happy birthday, Retronauts.
Yay.
Oh my god.
Your baby is 5,
creator.
Jeremy.
Retronauts is now in elementary school.
I forgot
Yeah.
my champagne popper.
Little boys growing up. Anyways, before we go into the main topic, let's do some retro news. There's not a lot, as is normal these days. There's not really a lot of retro news going on, but we have a few news items. The first being that Final Fantasy Tactics is now out on the iPhone for the rock bottom price of $16.
Good old Square Enix.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
They
the
always know
most
how to-
expensive iPhone game there is. Then,
I'm
right?
sure it is, and that is the $15 Square tax.
It's the video game equivalent of that app where you pay like $1,000 and the app just exists to be on your phone and say, I paid $1,000 for this app. It's
Except
like
It
the
shines
bling-
like
it's video
diamonds.
game bling,
Yeah, yeah.
basically.
take that down from the store.
Not yet.
Not yet. So, what do you
Actually,
guys?
it's not up in the store yet. I tried to download it right before this show, and it's not up as of this recording.
Right, but by the time this podcast goes up, it will be
Theoretically.
theoretically, unless the world ends.
So
or
is this
something.
more of a port of like the PSP remake or
It is
something?
a port of the PSP version, War of the Lions.
with some features stripped out of it? There's no multiplayer in this
no
version.
buttons.
No buttons either. And
Stripped out the button feature.
They did, and I was looking at it, and I guess it's a pretty good solution where there's one confirm button in the corner and a cancel button in the other corner, and I guess you just kind of move your finger up and down to simulate, moving the controller up and
Oh,
down.
so you
or
don't
left and
even have
right.
touch controls?
No, there's no virtual control pad aside from the confirm and cancel buttons.
Keeping it classy.
Well, hey,
No, he's saying there's no virtual control pad.
Okay.
It's not like a pretend D-pad.
But you get
You're not
you
like,
get to touch.
I'm pressing
You get to
spots
touch
on
the sword you
glass.
want to equip, though, right?
I think you can select it. You can move the cursor by moving your finger, and then you hit the confirm button in the corner.
Okay.
I don't think it's that complicated.
Maybe the iPad version will be precise for the iPhone, but
don't leap yet. There's still the iPad version,
right?
Because Square
It'll
also
cost.
Makes those separately, and who knows how many tens of dollars that will be.
That'll be $60.
$31.99. It's twice as much as the iPhone version because it's twice as big.
And the PSP version at this point.
So is anyone actually going to buy this out of anything aside from sheer curiosity as to how they put this on the iPhone?
I have the excuse of being in games journalism, so I will.
I quit the Final Fantasy series.
And I'll expense it.
I will never play a Final Fantasy.
How long
game.
ago? Because this is
I quit
technically
at 6.
Okay, this is technically not a Final Fantasy game, though.
That's true.
So you can.
But
dip
even by
into
that
it.
point, I was such a Nintendo fanboy at that time that I wouldn't play it on PlayStation.
Ooh, old habits die hard.
Then I tried it later on PSP.
Have you played the Final Fantasy Advance games? Have you played Tactics Advance? Have you played...
Yeah, I've played Tactics Advance.
Right, so you haven't really quit Final Fantasy.
No, I haven't.
You just threw a conniption fit and said, no PlayStation for me.
Yeah, that was at the time, and now I think Final Fantasy are... I just don't like...
Did I? There was no stereotypical accent intended.
I got a hint of it.
A little
It
bit.
was just meant to be whiny.
I recognize Tactics as one of the games that people always claim is the best game ever. So
It is excellent.
yeah,
Yep.
I bet
Yeah.
it is. But they also say that about Ogre Battle, and that game sucks.
Tactics Ogre is much better.
Yeah, Ogre Battle has problems. But yeah, I would not.
I like the invisible morality meter that completely determines your ending and you have no idea why.
Throughout the game, the decisions are invisibly
Not even
tracked.
decisions. It's not like, specific choices you make in dialogue or something. It's like, when do you fight? What enemy or what units do you field? How many bad guys do you kill? Like all of these things, you'd think you just want to win, but no. If you just win, you're a bad person. You have to win with extreme honor, and it's never explicitly stated.
Well, we just don't understand
Ogre Battle
honor,
hates you and thinks
right?
that you're scum, basically.
So the game is a true personality test, and that you
is,
don't
it
know
is.
the answers ahead of time.
It is INTJ.
Okay. So anything else on this port? Looks like we've
Tapped it
we've
out.
moved
Well, I
on.
mean, we haven't played it, so
That's true. Yeah, I just don't like the idea. But anyways,
I'm
In any
surprised
case,
that
it's-
games are getting ported to the iPhone that are old
why?
games in any way. I'm just surprised to see console games
The
appearing
content
on the iPhone. It
exists
shocks
and
me.
people will buy it. So what do they have to lose?
I agree. I mean, I
I bought
got
the
Dragon's
Secret
Lair
of-
too, and it's fantastic.